Terrence Crawford, speaking of Terrence Crawford earlier, he's come out and he's had some interesting statements to the LA Times about just his placement in the welterweight division. I thought I'd read his quote and maybe get some of your thoughts on it, Gary. Share some of my thoughts on it as well. Whether or not we think that Terrence Crawford is saying the right things at this point in time. Quote from Terrence Crawford: "It's frustrating, but I look at it as a business move by them not to fight me," Crawford said when asked why fights like Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman have failed to materialize. Quote, "I'm not going to knock them or be a hater, but I know where I stand. I know the game they're playing, and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to focus on what I can do and keep making a living, keeping my name up there as the best pound-for-pound fighter." Quote, "I don't know if that fight will ever happen," speaking about Errol Spence. "That's not something I can decide. It takes two people to fight. It takes two companies to sit down and figure it out and decide what network we're going to fight on, where we're going to fight, what the purses are going to be. It's not as easy as people think it is, but it could be easy if we finally sat down at the same table and made it happen." Now, that's sort of what I want to get to. Now, he has some other quotes about his mandatory and sort of defending it, and I mean, like that, I get it. He has to defend his mandatory, but the idea that that's not something I can decide, his exact quote. It's not up to his power, his control to make these fights. I want to push back on that a little bit. Like, I do understand that in large aspects, some of the power of fighters that we think is on their side or that they do have is not, that promoters and networks are far bigger entities and corporations, so therefore obviously they have more of a power of the relationship, so to speak, right? It's like the idea of like a star actress or actor having power over a movie studio. Like, that doesn't actually exist. The movie studio always has power over the actor and actresses. Why? Because it's a fucking movie studio. How much money they make compared to that one actor or actress? Same thing with like ESPN, Top Rank, PBC, Fox. These entities, these companies are far bigger than these individual fighters. So I think, to Crawford's credit, to give him some leeway in his argument, I do understand the argument he's making here that, look, like the powers that be here are sometimes out of my control. But I also think that for Crawford's case, he has not done himself any service. I think he has actively hurt himself in this process, to be honest. Not by like doing anything specifically, but by not doing anything, not speaking about anything. He is a guy that he does have power in this industry, whether he thinks he does or not. He just doesn't use it. Whether he has enough power to really push ESPN and Bob Arum to make certain fights that he wants is, I think, maybe a conversation for another time. But he has enough power to change the conversation in the public domain. And he chooses not to. He just chooses to be a recluse, chooses to be a guy that's a hermit, that's not really involved in the boxing landscape and changing how the conversation is organized. He's a guy that wants to be out of the picture. And that hurts him. If he went out there and did media rounds, calling out Sean Porter, calling out Danny Garcia, calling out Errol Spence, calling out Al Heyman, Sergey Lipinets, Ugas, if he did the media rounds and actually said some shit, Gary, do you think that the narrative and the public pressure would automatically shift on his side?
Yeah, like he's got to promote him, but like he's got to promote himself more. I remember when he was fighting for the undisputed 140-pound title against
Undango.
Like, he said he didn't go to the after weigh-in press conference because he wasn't contractually obligated to. Like, it came out that like he was dehydrated and he couldn't go. He's like, no, I was fine. I just told I didn't have to go, so I didn't. Like, this is not the Super Bowl, right? You're not Marshawn Lynch. You need to go sell yourself. Like, the Super Bowl is going to get 100 million viewers regardless of if anyone does an interview. You're not that. You have to, and I agree, Top Rank needs to do a better job with you.
Absolutely.
But you need to get there out yourself and do your part in promoting yourself. You can't say, I don't want to do a post-weigh-in interview because I don't have to, and then get mad at your promoter for not promoting you. You have to, like, do it yourself as much as you can, too, and then let the promoter take it from there. But that fight can get made. If both fighters really wanted it, it would get made. My hunch is that Spence doesn't care about the fight. Like he'll take it if the money's right, but he's not pushing for it. That's just kind of my hunch. Because if Spence really wanted it, it would have been made. Because ESPN and Top Rank and Crawford don't have a ton of other attractive options.
No, but like that's why I've expanded the conversation past Spence. Like if Crawford went out there and said, "Give me fucking Danny Garcia," if Terrence Crawford, if Terrence Crawford went on the Breakfast Club, Sway in the Morning, did every boxing podcast, Chris Mannix, Brian Campbell's, TBV's, whoever, okay, and he said, "No, I want this motherfucker," okay, I'll go to his backyard in the Barclays and beat his ass, okay. I don't care about the network. Hey, Bob, make the fight. Heyman, make the fight. If he just said those simple things and did enough media, it would be massive. If he went on First Take and said that shit, you don't think Stephen A. Smith and Max Hellman would take it off and the ESPN machine for a whole week wouldn't be talking about it? But he doesn't do himself any service here. He doesn't. And I do understand like his point about, hey, look, like, sometimes things are out of my control here. Sometimes there are greater powers at play here that I can't control. I get it. But creating and turning and framing public narrative is absolutely within your control. And public narrative and pressure is something that you can use to circumvent the powers that be, to make fights, to push for fights. And I get the Spence fight because I agree with you. Spence doesn't care about the fight right now. He has 4 other guys lined up for him on the PBC side that are going to make him the same amount of money and, in his mind, are the same amount of legacy to it. Right? He's thinking about Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Manny Pacquiao. All those fights, in his mind, probably equal the same paycheck and same amount of legacy. Right? Well, Crawford, guess what? There's other guys you can go after that can help define your legacy. The guys that Spence is going after too. Go poach some of those names. You're in a time where Spence is out of the sport in a way due to injury. Why aren't you really going after Danny Garcia's name?
I had a couple thoughts
or Sean Porter, who has no one wanting to fight him right now.
I was going to suggest I would start with Keith Thurman because Keith Thurman will mouth back and help sell the fight and get it made. But then just go down the line. Porter, I would go on First Take with Max and Stephen A., who pretends to like boxing, and be like, look, I thought Porter beat Spence. Y'all thought Porter beat Spence, and there's enough people out there who think he did. Let's make that fight. Like, Spence is scared to fight him again. I'll find him. Go out there and make it. But I'd start with Thurman, and if that didn't work, I'd go down to Porter and then Danny. But I would start. I think Thurman's the biggest money fight. I think it's the most interesting fight. I think it's the easiest to sell. So I would start there. And start with Thurman. And I think that could get made. I think, like, if you just went on and did the round, especially he has ESPN behind him, right? And he's got Max, who's a boxing guy, and Stephen A., who's a fake boxing guy, to help push that. So you're right. Like, he's got the platform. If he really wants to get this made, he can get it made. Except he doesn't want to go through the effort of going on. It's not really his personality to do that.
He hates interviews.
Okay, well, I'll just blame other people for this. But if he really wanted to make the fight, you're Terrence Crawford, you get the fight made. Maybe not with Spence, but the other guys, Keith would love to fight you. Porter would love to fight you. If you called out Porter right now, Porter would call Al and say, make that fight immediately. I want that fight. You know he would.
Sean Porter is such a throwback fighter. He doesn't need a tune-up. He doesn't need anything. You call him, give him a date, give him a paycheck, he's there. And it's Porter. Like, you give him like a $2 million paycheck, he's taking the fight.
Right, yeah.
You know, like, Porter's one of those...
You don't need to fight the Ejivis Kavalakises of the world, and whoever you want. You can get that fight. Porter would take it in a minute, and it would be a big enough payday where I was like, go ahead, go to ESPN. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It's frustrating now as a Terrence Crawford fan, to be honest, because I think that
he had no fight lined up. So after you take apart Ejivis, get out and say, I want to fight Danny Garcia next.
If he went out there post Kavalauskas and let's say blows him out in 3 or 4 rounds, I just makes him look like he just isn't belonging in that league, and says, look, I'm done fighting these guys. I want Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao. I want all those PBC names. Bob Arum, call Al Heyman right now, right after we get out of this ring, and let's make those fights. I want all of you guys. I'm coming for all of your heads. You know how viral that would go? Like, just... I get like some people are just like really like social anxiety is a big thing. Like doing interviews, that sort of thing is not their thing, even though they're celebrities or athletes. I get that. But holy shit, man. Like, see a sports psychologist. Like, see someone to get over that, right? Like, you've been the guy at Top Rank now for 4 or 5 years. And, like, you have not progressed in terms of your branding within that time frame at all. At all. And I think that's in large part due to you, Terrence Crawford, and obviously to Bob Arum and Top Rank. Because they've done a very shitty job to promote you as well. But I'm not surprised they've done a shitty job because you've done a shitty job as well. You know, it'd be one thing if Crawford was out there doing so much media, promoting himself better than anyone else, and Top Rank was still shit. Was still not really promoting him over Lomachenko. It would be a big issue then. But right now, I mean, I can't really blame Top Rank as much as I do in other instances, to be honest. And I'm not really a Top Rank fan, but I mean, again, Terrence Crawford, he has power. He has leverage. He just doesn't use it at all. Moving on.